Members, the question is the motion be agreed. The Honourable Brian Walker.
Thank you, President. I was delighted to hear of this motion, and I was equally delighted to have the wonderful contribution from the Minister Jackie Jarvis, who, of course, had been on that committee and is probably one of the most experienced people of this the Chamber, hopefully apart from myself, in dealing with matters of cannabis and hemp. So I was very pleased to hear about the government response to the hemp industry as such. And credit where credit is due, I think. It's good, it's about time, but we can always say that there's much more which could be done. We must be thankful for this, much more which could be done. I would, however, take just one word which bothered me about the last contribution by my esteemed friend, the Honourable Steve Thomas, when he mentioned that one episode of THC caused a life to be destroyed. That's the first I've heard of that in many years of using this with my patients. I can tell you certainly I've had many, many patients whose lives have been destroyed by one night of alcohol. Many. And the concept that THC on its own, apart from giving 4 hours of a hard time if you're taking too much THC naive, is not going to do a great deal more. Certainly won't send you paranoid for a lifetime. So I would suggest that perhaps we ought to have a chat about the situation and see what else was going on, because when you give cannabis in the hands of criminals, of course, you're going to get things which are not right. We need to have governmental input, I think, for health, to look after our minors, to look after those who are vulnerable. And I appreciate that the government is actually involved in this, and I so give credit, again, where credit is due. The problem I see here is that we're basically dealing with fear, the fear of THC. I'll give you an example of this. If we look at industrial hemp and look at that as a feed crop for cattle, the question then is how much THC is going to be present in the meat? And that's a very valid thing to be concerned about. How much THC is going to be in that meat? Can we then send people high by having a McDonald's hamburger? And the question then is, once you begin to calculate how much of the available THC from industrial hemp, even from high THC hemp, is given to cattle to eat, and then slaughter, and then consume that meat. The question is, and I haven't yet worked it out, because I haven't yet been able to calculate how many cows, whole cows, would I have to eat to get one high? It's not one cow, it's going to be several cows. I don't know how many. So the question that we would then be bothered by having a small amount of THC in meat is absolutely out of this world. I mean, it's not at all something I would be concerned about, but it does point out a problem that we have in dealing with the hemp question, which is fear. And the fear is inhibiting innovation, and it is part of the status quo thinking. Now, I have mentioned this before in this House, that the status quo is what keeps us from innovation. The status quo keeps us thinking about the past. And I was very glad to hear the government response that they're looking differently at hemp for the future, the innovative approaches for hemp. So the excellent research from DPIRD, I'm very glad to hear that. But we also have to look at hemp as an industrial crop, for example, in the Pilbara, where it could be very useful for helping Indigenous peoples to grow their own housing. And that would give a whole lot more social responsibility and social success to a people which have been thoroughly deregulated, if you like, thoroughly abused in the past and are struggling to find their way in life. But also, by having an industrial crop, we do actually have the potential for a microclimate change. We do have the potential for turning a miserable topsoil into 1 metre worth of valuable topsoil. These are all things which can be of immense importance to our agriculture in the future. Can you imagine what would happen if you rotated hemp, industrial hemp, with, say, canola or with wheat? What the benefits would be for the farmers, and they would be immense. We'd turn from a 3-bag yield into an 8-bag yield, potentially competing with the eastern states. So we'd have also a wonderful opportunity for revitalising areas of marginal agriculture. And these are things which have to be looked at. The problem is when dealing with hemp is that we're looking here at the fears regarding THC resulting in legislation which has slowed innovation, which has slowed research. And I'm very glad to see the excellent research from DPIRD is ongoing. However, time is also short. We have, right now, we are seeing climate change, the long predicted, long refused to believe climate change, which tells us that no, there is no such thing as climate change. This is natural swings in climate, and now we're seeing the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the droughts coming on board, and people are now beginning to see the reality of climate change. And we have, within our means, we have at least one crop which can be used to help alleviate, at least in certain areas, for example, in southwest of WA, can alleviate microclimate issues to some small degree, but every small step is a step in the right direction. There are barriers to be addressed, of course, but the essential thing is that we need, as politicians, it is our duty, it is incumbent upon us to make things better, to recognise when things are not good and to make improvements, even small but incremental changes which will improve the wellness of our society. So in this we can all agree, I think. The government, the opposition, and indeed the crossbench, I'm sure, would agree that this is our aim, this is what we aim to do, this is why we were elected. It wasn't to sit here and talk nonsense, it was to serve the people, and this is what we can do. I think hemp is an important tool in that. Which reminds me that one of the questions about how hemp could be used, we could look at the difference between using hemp and cotton for our fabrics. Cotton, of course, requiring a lot of water, requiring a lot of pollution in managing the freedom from disease, managing the difficulties in growing a crop. Even with high rainfall, hemp could actually replace the need for cotton. It could give us a future with fabrics which are indeed better for us in every way, both for the climate, and for the economy, and also for our environment. So coming back to this, we have two main points I'd bring out from this discussion about hemp, and that is that we need to battle against the concept of fear in our society. Fear has no place in our society. We need to look at things with a cold, clear eye and look for our own good future. And the status quo, which I will mention again and again, is the enemy of progress. And we need, at all levels, in government and outside government, to look at this as an enemy. Thinking about a different way of thinking beyond the status quo, I will quote again the Honourable Minister Jackie Jarvis mentioned the dam, an excellent place in Denmark with a look on life which gives us a fantastic setup, a fantastic organisation, a place for good food, a place for actually cannabinoid-infused alcohol, a place where the environment is being cared for in beautiful circumstances. And I would highly recommend people to consider that as a holiday target, but also we could look at that from our own party political view. Why not have a meeting down there in good company with good friends, in a good organisation, helping the local economy in one part of our great state. It was also said that industry needs to lead, and I could not agree more. It is not about government telling industry what to do. That is a huge mistake. Industry needs to lead the way, but government should be helpful in reducing the barriers. This is what we need to be doing. Reduce the barriers so that industry can take the lead, because it is up to industry to prove the case, to make the market aware of this. But if the barriers are there, such, again, I mentioned this fear of THC, preventing the use of the whole plant, which means that the plant, for whichever use you want it, is no longer economically viable because that part and this part can't be used because of current legislation. That stifles innovation, that stifles the business opportunities, and that is something we ought to be acutely aware of in supporting a hemp industry. And I'm sure that the government, especially with this review of the Select Committee report, is going to be taking this seriously, and I cannot thank them enough for doing that excellent job. Final thing here about the processing. What stops the processing of actually a wonderful crop? What stops the processing is the lack of an ability to sell the product. And a product is not being sold because industry has failed yet to make a case for why we're using this. For example, in pet bedding. For example, in roadside dust suppression measures. For example, in clothing. For example, in making laminates which are stronger than steel and able to make car bodies. For example, using hemp as a substrate for making sustainable, environmentally sustainable hemp batteries, which are, as far as research goes, more effective than the current lithium-ion batteries that we have. Bearing in mind also that battery development is increasing apace, and hemp has a place to play in that development. There is plenty of opportunity for this business, provided government gets out of the way. So I recommend the motion to the House. I'm glad to see support on both sides, and I stand here with thanks to my colleague for introducing this motion, which I hope all will agree.